Welcome to the Talking Timber podcast with me, Mike Jeffrey.
And me, Keith Fryer.
This is Mike. I'm a journalist. I specialise in writing about the timber and forestry sector, and I'm also consultant editor of the Timber Trades Journal, the TTJ. I've been reporting on the industry now for nearly 30 years, and I also work on publications and communication for the European Timber Trade Federation and the International Tropical Timber Organisation. I've also authored a book in association with the Confederation of Woodworking Industries in Europe on timber and construction. As I say, I'm consultant editor of the Timber Trades Journal, and I previously was editor for 15 years.
Very impressive, Mike.
Thank you, yeah.
Well, I'm not like that at all. I've always been involved in timber, from working with my dad in his chair frame business, then in an importers, a door and joinery manufacturers, and finally running a London-based timber merchants. Along the way, I've always supported our trade associations, firstly as treasurer, then as president of what was the TTF, now known as TDUK, and then more latterly at CEI Bois, I was a board member. That's the European Trade Association. I've now got a merchanting business called Fort, and that's based in West Berkshire. So we're pretty different, really, but still interested in the same stuff,
Chalk
though.
and cheese.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, so Talking Timber, in each edition, we're going to address a particular issue which we hope will be of interest to the trade.
Absolutely.
And problems, areas of contentiousness. And we very much invite comments back via our website or email.
That's the big thing we hope for, isn't it? That it's quite interactive.
Yeah, definitely. We want to hear what the trade thinks of what we're saying, if we're getting it right.
Yeah.
And also to add your views to our discussion, and potentially perhaps to appear yourself on Talking Timber in future.
Yeah, it'd be very welcome.
So we're kicking off Talking Timber with what I know, Keith, is a bugbear of yours. It's the selling of timber that's not fit for purpose. To be more precise, it's about the challenge of selling the right use class of timber or wood products for the job. Yeah,
that's right. There are 5 effectively user classes out there in the UK as defined under BSEN 335, which was 2013. They're dictated by the inherent durability of the timber species and, of course, the preservative treatment of wood. Class 5 is the most durable, suited to use in frequent or contact constantly with water. That's sort of things like sea defences, waterway piling. But really, most of the timber out there gets used in classes 4, 3, 2 and 1. Class 4 is one where it's going to be used externally in contact with or close to the ground. Class 3 is where timber's going to be used outside but not in contact with the ground. Class 2 is for interior use but with some resistance to moisture. A classic example of that might be where wood protracts out under a porch or something like that, or into soffit areas. Yeah. And then class 1 is non-durable for interior use in a dry environment.
Yeah.
Hope that's explained it.
Yep, that's the science over. Yeah, your problem, Keith, is that often, I'd say often, the wrong use classes of timber or wood product for the particular application are being sold and specified. Consequently, they don't last and even fail in use, with a risk to the general reputation of timber. And your specific issue is that use class 2 is being sold for exterior applications such as decking and other landscape uses, when it should really be use class 3.
Yeah, I've got lots of problems, Mike,
yes,
but this one really just keeps niggling away at me. It's partly my stubbornness, I think. Why do we, primarily the merchanting sector, have to accept a product that's knowingly produced to a standard that isn't compliant? Why treat decking, for example, to user class 2? British Isles timber, broadly speaking, is compliant. Scandinavian and Latvian timber isn't.
But and you say that one of the factors at play here is that the bulk of constructional timber, softwood, being imported is used Class 2. Consequently, it's readily available and cheap. So why is it being ordered by importers rather than used Class 3, which presumably provides the supplier, the importer, and ultimately the merchant a better margin?
Yeah, this is actually the heart of the issue. They, whoever they is, say that European spruce can't be treated to UC3 because its cell structure won't allow it. Effectively, it's too difficult, technically, to get the treatment into the timber. I'm personally not really convinced by this. The European material is, I think we all agree, a better quality because it's slower grown, it's a denser fibre, but to just categorically state that it's not technically possible to upgrade to UC3 seems wrong to me. I know it's my view against many others who hold firm on this point. There has to be a way to deal with this. I think there really, really must.
Yeah, and you've said that dual stocking, offering both used Class 2 and 3, is not viable for the average merchant. I mean, can you explain why that is?
Yeah, it's sort of simple accountancy, I guess. Why stock 2 of everything when it really only needs 1? The space on site, the cash flow, and inevitably the picking errors within merchanting branches would all make this pretty difficult. We do actually stock 2 at my business because I'm a bit of a sado, and it's because we take it quite seriously.
Yeah.
So we hold treated C16 timber, the structural joists, in the sections used for decking, where we insist on supplying, even though most customers scratch their heads. We'd far rather not be doing any of this, but we don't currently think that it's optional.
Yeah.
So in other words, what I'm saying there, Mike, is that we keep the UC3 material that's easily available,
yeah,
and we persuade our customers wherever we can to go down that route.
Right. But, I mean, how is it that customers buy the wrong use class for the job? I mean, do they not specify what they're using it for? And if not, isn't there a responsibility on the part of merchants to ask or to clearly label or otherwise highlight the use class of timber and what it's suited for in the warehouse or in the trade shop?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes customers ask for or even just order a list of materials, including some constructional timber within it. So, you know, it could be literally some nails, some screws, some plywood, some joists, some all sorts of other stuff.
One-stop shop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And within it, there's these joists. They're not really thinking much further than that.
Right.
Labelling might work if everything was going to be collected, but the majority of timber products get delivered to site and where the team then go and fix it. Educationally, in our business, we explain why we offer what they might see as being an inferior product because of its improved longevity, because the treatment process that it's undergone. In other words, this sort of homegrown is a phrase I don't really like myself. Timber has a perception of not being quite as good as the imported.
Yeah.
But because it's got the higher treatment factor, actually, it's a better product.
Right.
Sometimes that plays against us. Some customers want that C24 type of material, the imported, because they feel it has got supernatural properties. I accept this is a complicated situation. And because they're also getting mixed messages from their suppliers, it all creates a very muddled picture.
Yeah. But also, isn't there a liability issue for the merchant? I mean, if a customer buys the wrong timber for the job, such as a deck or a garden structure like a pergola, and it actually fails in use, doesn't that come back to bite the merchant who sold it?
Yep. Ultimately, there is that possibility. I mean, being realistic about it, proving this years down the line is pretty much impossible. I've not heard of an instance, although there must have been some, where litigation has occurred, and in a way, do you know what? That's actually part of the problem.
Because nobody's been taken to task on it.
Yeah, the supply chain gets away with it, but in the end, it'll come to haunt us as people turn to alternatives. We only have to look at the window industry. I think that's a great example myself.
Yeah.
In the 1980s and even well into the 1990s, Timber windows were by far and away the bulk of all manufacture, but they were constantly worked down in quality. Site practices exacerbated this. I mean, examples being glazing and decorating windows on site. And what's that resulted in? Today, there's hardly a single timber window used in new build.
Yeah.
And that's a really scary scenario.
Yeah, and it's not surprising, is it? I do remember my parents bought their retirement home, brand new property in Norfolk, and I think within 2 or 3 years, their windows start to cause them real problems.
Yeah,
the paint peeling, the timber frames beginning to sort of deteriorate.
Yep, and it's something you hear time and time again. Look what it's done to that sector of the market. We've gone from large national bases of window manufacture across the UK, literally from Scotland right down into the West Country.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I mean, it's still there, but it's a microcosm of what used to be out there in terms of window manufacture, because we've allowed the market to go away from us.
Yeah, and timber windows these days, I mean, I think I'm right in saying, are regarded as a rather specialist product, aren't
Very
they?
much so.
Not a mass market.
I mean, literally, while we're recording this, funnily enough, we've got a delivery going on to site next Monday, where a supply and fit of a whole load of timber windows, factory glazed, fully finished, really high spec, to a beautiful house where they want to replace the window units there, but they're few and far between.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the old days, Bovis or Wimpy or all those household names, they all fitted timber windows.
Yeah.
That's all gone.
Yeah. And that's a long tradition in the UK, isn't it?
It is.
You go back to Victorian times, or not quite as long as that, but we had a house with Victorian sash windows that had lasted 100 plus years.
Yep. And we're seeing that, and that's really where we're heading if we're not careful with by just not having the right user class, and timber dissolving, if you like, out there in the open, when we could have done something about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, in your career, have you had examples of customers coming back to you complaining that the timber product just hasn't lasted as long as hoped?
Yep. I've got to admit it. I think that's happened many, many times, or I've heard of people recounting tales and stories to me of where this has happened, as we've met as trade people over the years, and the complaints tend to be unquantifiable.
Yeah.
And again, as I said earlier, that's a bit of a problem. The industry heaves a sigh of relief because we've collectively got away with it, but actually we're just building up a perception issue. Some of it's down to design. Some will be poor site practice and also poor specification. Timber's pretty complicated, actually, and we tend to try and offer very simplistic solutions, many of which work because they're over-specified. But sadly, there's far too many instances of poor delivery.
Yeah. And as you say, I mean, the ultimate danger here is that timber generally, its image in the marketplace is going to be adversely impacted.
Yeah.
And people are going to think, timber's, it's not worth us buying a timber product. Let's look at something else. Let's look at wood plastic composites or aluminium or...
Yeah, there's so many options. It's a big wide world out there, and you look at UPVC windows.
Yeah.
That's just one example of many. Of course, they've effectively taken the whole market over for windows. I mean, it's the vast majority, I would think, of what's being supplied and fitted. I suppose we would say this, wouldn't we? But environmentally, the two just don't compare. And we really should be doing something about it to bring some of that market back. But I think what we're really talking about here is the market that still exists, which is the use of timber externally, decking being one big example of where it still is. But there are many others. And we're just not actually supplying timber that's treated to the right specification.
So your ideal scenario is that use class 3 timber becomes the industry standard, the default for all exterior applications, including covered areas such as porches. But how do you see that? How do we achieve that? Is it down to all the merchants flagging up use class more prominently, or is there also a role for the timber sector as a whole via its trade bodies? Notably the Timber Development UK or TDUK to raise market awareness of the importance of user class?
Yes, I think it's a sort of a yes and no answer there. User class 3 gets us to a far better position, and I agree that. However, it doesn't really fully finish off the possible problems. I mean, ultimately, why stop at 3? Why don't we just get the job done and have all timber treated to user class 4?
Right.
And obviously there will be those rare examples where we're looking for something like user class 5.
Yeah.
But if we got it to user class 4, everything would work everywhere.
Yeah.
It would add value. It would defend timber instead of us gradually or grudgingly increasing the specification bit by bit. So in other words, going from 2 to 3 to 4, why don't we just go for 4? I suppose the answer is to set our sights on 4, find the technology to make that happen, and begin the journey by immediately moving to 3.
Right.
Even though I know some people would say that it's unrealistic, personally, I just don't agree. I really disagree on that point. I think we can get that whole journey done.
Yeah. But what about the cost implications? Would that make timber more expensive?
Yeah, it would, but that's a good thing. And, I've got lots of examples of where in the timber industry we've done that by adding value.
Yeah.
But really, the difference in cost between user class 2 and user class 4 in the great scheme of the total product price it's really fractional.
Yeah.
And also the simplicity of just having everything set on the dial for 4 would actually make a lot of those costs, I think, would just disappear anyway.
Yeah.
Because it'd be so simplistic. There's one treatment system, user class 4.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. And is there perhaps, a role for the timber treatment sector as represented by the Wood Protection Association? Is there a role for them here? I mean, isn't this a commercial opportunity for treatment manufacturers and companies that undertake treatment to highlight the value and performance of treated timber? Particularly, as you say, as preservative treatments continue to get better in performance, not only in terms of increasing timber durability, but also in environmental performance. That's been a big step forward for them, hasn't it?
It has. And got a great story out there. It's not that the timber treatment industry doesn't have the capability and has made huge strides forwards. I mean, it's great. And I think there's a big role here for Timber Development UK, but also the British Isles sawmilling industry, all those companies in there. I'm talking about across Ireland, Wales, Scotland and England. Maybe even CONFOR has got something it could do to promote this policy.
That's the Confederation of Forest Industries.
Yeah, I should have said that. Yeah, sorry, all these acronyms. The timber treatment industry should, I think, be doing far more. I personally feel they're almost trying to defend the indefensible. I'm sure they'd disagree, but I'm puzzled. NHBC, the National House Building Confederation, they should also be pressing for this, because if it's demand driven, that will help bring, almost suck the whole thing in the direction that we want to go. Yeah. There's lots of different bodies out there that need to wake up. There are so many examples of where we've already upgraded low value products, and unsurprisingly to me, the users have all just taken it on board. Yeah. And could I be boring and give you 3 examples?
Please do. Yeah, go ahead.
These are my real hobby horses of mine. Yeah. So first one would be MDF. Yeah. These days, if you're in the merchant industry, moisture-resistant MDF is pretty much standard. Yeah. There's a few clinging on who still offer a standard MDF product, but the merchant panel offering these days is pretty much all moisture resistant. Yeah. Standard grade has fizzled out. Yeah. Hooray. Yeah. An added value, higher grade product.
And a marketing story.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. It's great. It's making it better, means that there's less complaints about it. Yeah. Everyone's happy. Yeah. And we're selling a product that's worth a bit more money. Yeah. Flooring grade chipboard. I love this one. I mean, when I first started out in the industry, which I do admit was quite a long time ago, it used to be 18mm thick slabs of a pretty indifferent material, got hammered down and used for flooring.
And failed not?
I think it did. It was indifferent. There'll be a mixture of issues out there.
Yeah.
Now it's got a specified or specific density. It's produced as a tongued and grooved panel. It's also moisture resistant. And for almost all new build, it's now 22 millimetre thick, not 18.
Yeah.
22 millimetre far outsells 18 millimetre.
Yeah.
So you think of that journey on what is probably one of the most humble, low-cost products that we could ever get.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've done that journey and added all that value into the product.
Yeah.
So, hooray, added value again.
Yeah, and you've spoken about what's been going on with constructional timber in time.
Start that journey. When I first was in this game, it used to be literally wet, and I do mean by that sopping wet sometimes, almost dripping. People saying, "Could I have a pair of goggles, please? Because when I put the nails in, I get splashed in my face."
Yeah.
Sawn lumps of wood that dried out. I mean, it was described as dry, but a lot of that stuff wasn't really dry when it got onto a building site.
Yeah, so what's the picture today?
At that point, you got creaky, uneven floors, lots of complaints in the new build sector. And here we are today, kiln dried, planar regularised, even got little eased edges, bless it, so that poor guys don't hurt their hands on the edges.
Yeah, important.
It's graded to C16 or C24 using really high grade technology, so you get really good consistency. So hooray again.
Yeah,
added value.
Yeah, added value. Yeah,
product to be proud of. And when it started back in the late 1990s, I know many people scoffed. Some tried to undersell it by continuing to supply the real rubbishy stuff that had worked in the past.
Yeah.
But actually, builders know quality when they see it and when it's obvious, and they switched in droves.
Yeah, so this has got lessons for user class.
I really do think so. We've just got that one tiny, minuscule step to take that would make this product the perfect one. Just treat it to UC4.
Yeah. And then the market would have a consistent, uniform quality product that performs.
I think so.
Yeah.
It really, honestly, just seems like a puzzler to me.
Yeah.
Why on earth aren't we doing that right now?
Yeah. Yeah, so, ultimately this is an issue that impacts the reputation of woods, it's the issue of price, what the price that buyers are willing to pay for it, and its market share versus wood substitutes. If it's seen as a product that fails or doesn't, perform to expectations, then that's an open door to alternative products, which are, as you said, less environmentally sound than timber. Yeah,
and also, I know, well, hopefully we are going to get some feedback on this, Mike, and some people are going to be quite indignant about what I've said. Okay. And I think I know where we're going to get some issue, which is about, well, how do we treat spruce to UC4? Well, we've proved that you can do it through incising for fencing products and things like that. Yeah. So, do you know what? I am absolutely convinced that where there's a will, there is a way. Yeah. I'm sure this can be done, but we've just got to get our heads around it and work out how to do it.
Yeah. So you've got that off your chest?
Yeah.
Do you feel better now? That
marginally. I'll feel a lot better one day when we actually see it happening.
Yeah.
And I do believe, I really do think we're going to see this happen.
Yeah.
So I think we've got this website, haven't we? And we've got an email facility. So the Talking Timber website, talkingtimber.co.uk. I really hope we're going to get some feedback on this subject.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's going to be good for wood.
Yeah. I think this is more like being on the psychiatrist's couch a bit, though. I know, I need to calm down a bit. You've questioned me on all of this. I do feel a bit better for being questioned, but as soon as we go back there in the big wide world, I suspect a lot of people will be hoping that the can gets kicked down the road a bit longer. Yeah. But ultimately, let's see if we can make a difference and make this really happen.
Yep. Okay. Well, the invoice for the therapy is in the post.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, one of many, I suspect.
Yeah. So thank you very much for listening to Talking Timber.
Yeah.
And as we said, get in touch, come back with your views on what we've been talking about today, and we can incorporate those comments, perhaps even if you want to be included in the next Talking Timber and be an interviewee, we can do that as well. So go to talkingtimber.co.uk and let us know your thoughts.